I'll do my best.
All right, thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. This is April Forts from the Iowa Department of Education, and welcome to the Coaches Network. And our host webinar is Paul Conley and Gita from OpenUP Resources, and they are going to help us learn some things about the resources. And so for those of you that tweet, there is my handle and my hashtag. And we're also going to give a shout out to I Teach Math, because that is really a great hashtag to just share what we're learning about with OpenUP Resources. And you can follow Paul. And I put this in the chat, and I will also email it out with the recording, as well as I just got a 5-minute video clip that I will also be sharing with you, because we have now got OpenUP Resources for 6th grade in the statewide LMS, which is the learning management system. So that is like Canvas, but not exactly. It's kind of like a Moodle, but not exactly. And so for those teachers or educators using it that maybe your district doesn't currently buy Canvas or another learning management system, you would be able to use that with your students in the classroom. So we're just looking at all those ways to differentiate that. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop sharing screen, and then Paul will be able to take over, and then we will go from there. Remember to put your questions and your comments in the chat, and we will monitor those. And if it gets to an appropriate time, or Paul, if you want to let me know, like, hey, are there any questions? Or if you just want to go through and we can take questions at the end, that's perfectly fine. So thank you so much for joining us and being willing to do this for us.
Yeah, hey, my pleasure. And thanks to all of you for joining us and for allowing us the space to share the work that we're doing and the curriculum that we have for middle school math. So just really quickly, can you guys, or April and Gita, can you give me a verbal confirmation that my screen is sharing okay?
Yes.
Okay. So just really quickly, my name is Paul Conley. I work with OpenUP Resources, and I'm an instructional field specialist on the math team. I am a former middle school math teacher. I worked in a large school district for several years. I spent a lot of time working with teachers and school and district leaders, developing and implementing professional learning. And Gita, do you want to just do a quick introduction for yourself?
Yes, I'm Gita Dev. I have just recently started with OpenUP Resources. I'm also an instructional field specialist, and my background is primarily middle school and high school, and I've been teaching math for 13 years, and then I moved over to, as well, for the district and state level, working with curriculum.
Okay. So thanks again. We'll jump in, and if you have questions, just throw them in the chat box. I probably won't read the chat box as we go, but I'm sure like April and Gita will have opportunities to read and possibly respond as we move. So who we are, OpenUP Resources, we're a nonprofit, and we are making sure that everyone, regardless of where you live and financial resources, has access to an incredibly high quality, free math curriculum. And so we're very mission driven in our organization. So what we did is we were able to raise some money through philanthropic donors a couple of years back, partnered with Illustrative Mathematics, particularly because of Bill McKellen and the work that he did in developing the standards and his work on learning progressions. After they had a chance to develop the curriculum, we actually internally revised and helped give feedback on the curriculum using IQIP and EMAT rubrics. And during that same time, we rolled out our curriculum and did a large-scale district betas. We had 175 teachers last year piloting our curriculum and giving us feedback and tweaking as we go. Last August, we released our curriculum as an open educational resource in August of 2017. Since August, something in the ballpark of 25% of all the school districts in the United States have engaged with our resources in various ways, which is phenomenal. It's only like 6 months ago. And really, we can help you with implementing this curriculum. We have all kinds of implementation support services, from PD to printing, whatever you need. We are here to really support you and think through how to implement this curriculum in a very thoughtful and meaningful way to really support and grow both teachers and students. And I think there's always some confusion. So just to be clear, so OpenUP Resources, we are the publisher. We're a very non-traditional publisher, but we are a publisher. And we partnered with Illustrative Mathematics, who is the author for the curriculum. We do partner with various PD partners. So Illustrative Mathematics is one of our partners, along with Better Lesson and Teaching Lab and Enmold Education. I'm a big fan of Deborah Ball, and one of the things that Deborah Ball really imparts on us in her work around mathematical knowledge for teaching and working and supporting and growing teachers is this idea that, you know, in this country, we have a culture where we don't really have a common resource that teachers are using within a school or a district, and a lot of times teachers are left to create their own resources, even from classroom to classroom. And so when we think about professional learning and growing teachers without a common resource that we're all using to grow our teachers, we're really losing out on a big opportunity to make huge strides in improving pedagogical practice if we're all on the same page with the resources that we're using, which is why it's so important to be able to have a curriculum like ours that is absolutely free, and then to be able to reinvest in your teachers through professional learning. So just as a high level, understanding our curriculum, it's a problem-based curriculum, and it's designed around a discourse-driven classroom. And as we dig into that, we'll talk more about the 5 practices and how that's really part of our resources. We are also in the works of developing a high school curriculum, which will be ready to go 1920 for a full release. And it sounds like there's a lot of folks in Iowa that are going to be doing beta pilots in high school next year, which is incredibly exciting work. And if you've been asleep for the last few weeks, you probably missed this, but if you have been awake, I am sure that you've got an email or read it somewhere that our middle school math curriculum is the highest rated math curriculum on EdReports. And why that's important is because we meet expectations on every category. And so when you dig into EdReports, you're going to notice that there are other resources that meet expectations on alignment with focus and coherence and rigor in mathematical practices. The usability is our differentiator. It is what sets us apart from every other resource. No other curriculum in math, no other curriculum meets expectations on usability. And we're going to unpack that in a little bit, and we'll talk about the meeting expectations around usability and why that's so important for you in your district as you consider using this curriculum. So this is a full course curriculum. I think sometimes people are wondering, like, is it a supplement or, you know, is it an intervention? It's not. It's a full course middle school math curriculum. And just to give you a sense, really it's designed to be taught in a roughly 50 to 55 minute period of time. There's pre-unit diagnostic assessments. There are formative assessments that are embedded. We have end of unit assessments. It is a comprehensive resource. One of the things we want to make sure that people know, so as you're thinking about possibly piloting or using this curriculum, we do provide some guidance on the sequence of units that are in the resources. And so the unit dependency chart is very helpful in thinking through how to use the scope and sequence documents that we already have in tandem with what you might already be building out in your district for scope and sequences. And so an example of what we mean by unit dependencies is, for example, in 6th grade, you really would not want to teach Unit 3 prior to teaching Unit 2. And the reason is Unit 3 is at unit rates and percentages. And if students don't have those prior skills and knowledge around ratio, teaching Unit 3 is going to be a bit of a kerfuffle. And so we really want kids to have this really great experience in their learning, and the sequence of learning is incredibly important. One of the things we want to talk about is just the shifts that are implied by the standards. And so the 3 main shifts that we're talking about are the focus, coherence, and rigor. So let's talk about focus. So focus is really thinking about this idea of, we want teachers and students to go away from the model of a mile wide and an inch deep. We want them to move into an area where they're thinking about going a mile deep and an inch wide. So when you think about the major work of the grade level and those clusters, so there's clusters, there's major work, the additional and supporting work. The major work is where we have students spending the majority of their time. And as you can see, in 6th grade, for example, almost 70% of their time is on the major work of the grade level. In 8th grade, that bumps up, and you can see in 8th grade, it's almost 81% of the time that kids are engaged with the major work of the grade level. And we really think about those additional and supporting clusters truly in support of the major work of the grade level. And so what does that mean? What does it mean when you have additional and supporting clusters in support of the major work? So a really great example of that is when you look at 8th grade and you look at Unit 5 in 8th grade, at first glance, this might throw people for a bit of a curve, because within this unit, we talk about functions, and the whole unit is designed around functions, which is the major work of 8th grade. And so the first 10 lessons in this unit is setting up the work of functions in 8th grade. And then you'll notice that those next set of lessons focus on volume. Volume in 8th grade is the additional cluster in 8th grade. So what's going on with this unit is that you're going to notice that students are going to really dig into functions, define and make sense of functions, and now they move into volume. And so what they're doing with volume is making connections to when I change the dimension for the radius of a cone, how does that change the output of the volume of the cone? And so you really think about volume as a function with an input-output model and structure to help support students deepen their understanding of the major work of the grade level, which is the functions. Another way we think about coherence is thinking about across grade levels. Another way that we think about coherence is a way we think about it across grade levels. And so from 6th, 7th to 8th grade, we really want kids to experience mathematics in a meaningful way, kind of like how a story would unfold. So just like you would not pick up a book, Harry Potter, for example, and start reading in chapter 7, we wouldn't want kids to experience math in a very clunky way where the story would not make sense. So what we mean by that is when you think about the mathematics across grade levels, in 6th grade, kids are engaging with equivalent ratios and they're using ratio tables. We move those same representations and language and talking points around equivalent ratios, and we move those into 7th grade and use those same things to make connections to proportionality and the constant of proportionality. From 7th grade, we move those big ideas along the same continuum into 8th grade, where students still use this idea of proportional relationships, but now we extend their thinking of proportionality by adding in y-intercepts, and now students move into linear relationships and are able to differentiate between a proportional and a linear relationship. Another way we think about coherence is within a grade and across units within a grade. So in 8th grade, the first 3 units are congruent, similarity, and linear relationships. So in the first unit, kids use the definition of congruence to build a definition of similarity in the unit 2. As students define and make sense of similarity, we have them explore points on a line and looking at similar triangles and looking at quotients of vertical and horizontal sides to see the connections between those similar triangles, points on a line, and how the slopes are all the same if you have 2 points, any 2 points on a straight line. And then we talk about coherence within a unit, within a grade level. So in 6th grade and unit 2, students are working on equivalent ratios. So in this unit, you will notice how kids are making sense of equivalent ratios using very concrete counting representations. They move those concrete counting representations to double number line diagrams. And then, as they're using those double number line diagrams, we move them to a different level of abstraction and by looking at equivalent ratios and ratio tables. And so you move from really concrete to more abstract ways of thinking about the mathematics in a very coherent way. Lastly, one of the shifts we talk about is rigor and how we think about balancing conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and mathematical application. A very specific example of rigor unfolds in Unit 4 in 6th grade. And so Unit 4 in 6th grade is a unit on division of fractions. What you'll notice is the way we really think about setting up conceptual understanding in this unit is allowing time for teachers and students to engage in deeper understanding of division and what it means to regroup and rescale and how fractions are grouped and developing those deep underlying structures of the mathematics. So when they move into the more formal thinking around division of fractions, it makes sense. And so what kids do then is they move from conceptual to procedural. They look at tape diagrams and they develop and build those algorithms for procedural fluency. And so they're creating and refining and testing those algorithms that they're making. And then we move them into application. So now that they've dug deep into the conceptual, they've had a chance to dig into the procedural, they extend their procedural fluency into the land of application where they're applying their learning of division of fractions in very meaningful ways. And so you can again see how the volume and surface area and area, which is the additional and supporting work of 6th grade, is now embedded into the major work of the grade level, connecting division of fractions. The overall structure of a lesson looks like this, where every lesson has its own warm-up activity. It has its own activity synthesis. There's an overall lesson synthesis and a cool down activity. And so this will just give you a sense of how the flow of every single lesson is. So we provide all of the what, and now you have time as teachers to just think deeply about how are we going to implement this curriculum in our classrooms. And talking more deeply about the lesson structure, if you're familiar with the books, The 5 Practices and Intentional Talk, these books are really the guiding framework for how we think about designing our lessons. So when you think about the 5 practices, our curriculum provides very clearly the learning goals, possible misconceptions that students would have, and there's a lot of ways that we support teachers in thinking through how do you monitor, select, sequence, and connect student thinking and work in meaningful ways to make those discussions in your class productive and meaningful for all kids. The Intentional Talk book is really there to support thinking around those question stems that are embedded in the resources for teachers, particularly around the activity and lesson synthesis. One of the things that I personally really love about our curriculum is how we've embedded instructional technology into this resource in such a way that it actually aligns and supports the instruction that's happening in the classroom. So when I look at this lesson, for example, this is a lesson where the learning goal is, for kids, let's look at what color mixtures has to do with ratios, and students are actually learning about equivalent ratios. So what you would do as a teacher is you would tee this lesson up by talking about what happens when you mix blue and yellow. And so as a teacher, you would say, when you mix blue and yellow, you get the color of green. If you have more blue than yellow, you get a darker shade of green. If you have more yellow than blue, you get a lighter shade of green. So now, as a teacher, you can help kids understand and make sense. So when they're working through these activities and these questions, they're seeing that when I have the exact same shade of green, it's the same ratio of blue and yellow. Even if I double or triple the mixture on the left, when the ratios are equivalent, the shade of green is the exact same. And so kids work through a series of tasks and problems associated with this instructional technology resource to really support and develop their deeper understanding of equivalent ratios and how it connects to very specific concrete representations. So when we talked about the usability score on the Ed reports, usability is what really differentiates us from any other curriculum out there. No other math curriculum meets expectations on usability. And I'll tell you why our curriculum meets expectations and why it's such a powerful thing to do. When you look at our curriculum, what you're going to notice is that in the curriculum, we've embedded these instructional routines. You're going to see things like algebra talks and notice and wonder and number talks. There are instructional routines that are deeply embedded into the curriculum. And so what that means for you is, as a teacher, you're able to see how these strategies are built into the curriculum. Not only are you being told that these are the strategies to use, but where, when, and how to use them in such a way that it takes all of the guesswork out for you as a teacher on how to do these instructional routines. I was talking to a school district a couple of weeks ago, and I just said, all of you teachers have probably been in the professional learning where you learned number talks. And you've probably spent multiple hours talking about number talks as an instructional strategy. You probably watched videos, you looked at tasks, you practiced it. And when you left the PD, what happened? And all the teachers admittedly said, yeah, kind of funny. We didn't do anything. We filed that PD into a cabinet and never saw it again. It's because so many resources that teachers currently use don't provide those concrete structures on how and where and when to embed those routines and strategies that they're learning in PD into the curriculum they're using. So we flipped the model. We've said, we can provide professional learning to support you on these instructional routines and strategies. And oh, by the way, our curriculum is designed in such a way that it takes all of the guesswork out. And now you have a resource that really allows you to develop your teachers through these professional learning opportunities, to use these instructional routines in incredibly meaningful and powerful ways that support you with when, where, and how to do these. And that's the same when you look at our mathematical language routines that support our ELL population. We have strategies and supports embedded into the curriculum. So all of the what, where, when, and how is taken out of the guesswork, and now teachers can focus on, I use this instructional strategy at this specific point in time to help my teachers understand when the strategy is appropriate, how to do the strategy, and when I should be doing it in the context of the lesson. Same thing for students with disabilities. We have these supports embedded and built in such a way that all of the guesswork is gone. So when you do PD around these instructional routines and strategies, it'll gain traction and have teeth with your teachers. In addition to that, we hear from teachers all the time about differentiation and how do you extend learning and how do you differentiate for kids. We also provide, every single lesson has built-in extended learning features, which allows teachers to differentiate to meet the needs of their more advanced or GT students without having to go spend extra time planning and digging and finding resources. They're just part of the curriculum. And so our usability charts, our scores are just off the chart. No other curriculum is doing what ours is doing in support of teachers. In addition, every single lesson has its own built-in set of practice problems. And so this allows you as a teacher to have additional resources that you can provide to kids to practice and develop procedural fluency, to think about opportunities for homework or other engagement, to revisit and revise and review their learning from each lesson. The assessments are a really critical component of our resource. So this is a pre-unit and an end-of-unit assessment, just a snapshot of what we have in 7th grade. What you'll notice on the pre-unit assessment for 7th grade is that we have prior grade level skills or standards on our pre-unit assessment for 7th grade. What you're going to notice on our pre-unit assessments is we have put in prior grade level skills and standards so that you have vertically aligned prior grade level understandings of where kids are coming into this new unit, and you now understand how well prepared kids are, how well prepared they are to engage in new content for that unit. And so these pre-unit assessments are incredibly powerful. And the only reason we didn't get a perfect score in usability was we did not tell teachers how to use pre-unit assessments to drive instruction. And we're okay with that, and I'll tell you why. Because we believe that every school and district is so unique in how they work on Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction and intervention models that we really believe that you are best equipped to make those decisions about how to use these diagnostic tools to support your students. But they are really powerful pre-unit and end-of-unit assessments that really help you as a teacher understand where your kids are in their learning of mathematics. In addition to all of those incredible free resources, we've also built in resources for families. What's really amazing about the family materials is every single unit has embedded these incredible resources for parents. So the parents now have a deeper understanding of the mathematics that their students are going to be doing. And when you start to look at the family materials, you'll notice that in addition to helping the parents understand, it provides tasks that parents can work on with their students, and it gives parents the answers, the responses that their kids may have as they're working through the mathematics to help the parents understand how to support their students in the mathematics that they're doing, which is a really wonderful resource for so many folks out there that just want to help their kids but just don't know how. And so really when we think about our curriculum, we really think about when you're adopting this curriculum and you're making a decision to invest in a curriculum, you're really not investing in a curriculum, you're really investing in your teachers in your district. And the investment comes in the form of professional learning. And so we have various professional learning partners that are here to help support you in meeting the needs of your teachers where they are and meeting the needs of your coaches and district leaders where they are to make sure that this curriculum is successful when it's implemented in your district. So we have ways to think about cultivating instructional leadership, mastering materials, and propelling your instructional practice as teachers. In addition to that, we know that not every school district is on a one-to-one, in a place to implement this curriculum in a one-to-one environment. So we also have really low-cost, high-quality print materials that we offer you. We are going to have math kits that will be consumable and non-consumable kits for teachers. But if you have those digital resources, we have lots of ways to support you with that as well. I mean, you heard April say that the curriculum is getting loaded into the statewide learning management system that you guys can all access for free. And now you got these other great resources such as OneNote and common cartridge files that you can load and use in your own district if you choose. We're really here to partner with you in implementing and using this curriculum in meaningful ways so that it's just not adopting a curriculum. It is truly an investment in your teachers and your coaches to lead this work and to do this work well. Just to give you a sense of the print materials, each book comes in its own unit, so every student gets its own unit, and then you talk about the print looks like this. It's very nice color materials. It's got a nice thick paper. In addition to the print materials, you'll notice that we have QR codes embedded into the resources as well. So if you want kids to engage in those instructional technology resources, kids can jump in, they can scan these QR codes with their Chromebooks or iPads or whatever resource they have, and it takes them right to the applet for that lesson, and then the kids can just jump in and start engaging with the mathematics. So I think that, you know, for me, for next steps, I just want to offer, we are here to support you all in doing this work well. The curriculum is absolutely free. There is no catch. There never will be a catch. It will always be free. It is an open educational resource. And we're here to support you through whatever resources and support implementation services you need to do this well. And I just want to reiterate, you know, my contact information is on the slide and the screen here. Please feel free to reach out to me and to Geeta. And Geeta, if you want to throw your contact information in the chat box as well. Geeta and I are really here to be partners with you in this work. And April has been an incredible partner as well. And so if I'm dropping the ball, April can quickly slap me upside the head virtually and get me moving again as I need to be. But I'm going to open it up. And so I wanted to make sure that there's time built in to really help answer some questions that may be sitting out there for all of you.
Hey, Paul, that was great. I did get one, and so we can get to that. And then maybe also after we take some of their questions that they can put in the chat, and we'll answer those. I can ask them. They don't have to mute unless they want to. But maybe we can actually jump into, for those that maybe haven't seen it, in the live online platform. So we can jump into that. So yeah, you'll want to open that up and then share screen. And I will be sending out this PowerPoint, as he said, and also the contact PowerPoint. I will also be, great, thank you. Just in case there's, you know, some questions around that, or we want to show something there. I will also be sending out the video that explains how teachers can now access the 6th grade in the statewide learning management system. As Paul mentioned, we do have a statewide learning management system here in Iowa that's free for all educators and students to use. It's a single sign-on now. And they're doing a little bit of an upgrade in March, but so they're improving that. We now have the 6th grade loaded in there, and we're shooting to have the 7th and 8th grade for next year, and then high school whenever they make that available. The one question that comes up a lot is, that's a bit confusing, is it seems like it seems like the resource starts with geometry, which is not a traditional way that generally that would start the middle school year with geometry. And I've heard it explained as because geometry is not part of the major works, and so it's kind of like when you're setting up routines. So if you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's a great question, April, and that actually comes up a lot. So we do start each grade level with geometry, and I'll tell you, there's 3 reasons, in my opinion, why that is. So the first one is really thinking about, you know, what typically happens when you start a school year as a teacher. You spend 2 to 3 weeks re-engaging kids with prior grade level skills, and the problem with that is that you lose 2 to 3 weeks of instructional time around new content. So when you dig into our curriculum and you look at the lessons for these first units, in the first unit, the geometry unit, you're going to notice that we're building on prior grade level standards and skills. And so what we really do is think about, one of the first things we think about is really, it's important for you to embed prior grade level skills into learning new content. So our curriculum is beautifully designed so it allows your teachers to revisit skills from prior grade levels without having to lose 2 to 3 weeks of instruction, while simultaneously exposing kids to new content in that unit. And so you're going to see here, like 4th and 5th grade standards are going to be reviewed, but they're going to move into the 6th grade content while reviewing those prior grade level skills. Additionally, Another reason that we think that geometry is really important to start the school year is because we really want students to start the school year on a very positive note. We want them to gain self-confidence. We want them to feel very smart and have a lot of fun and enjoy mathematics right off the bat. And by starting the year with geometry, students really come back feeling incredibly proud. They gain tons of self-confidence. The geometry content is very accessible to them. It's very concrete. It allows them to have a very positive experience. And lastly, as you saw the way that the 8th grade mathematics unfolds, right? You move from congruence to similarity into linear relationships, but we did it in such a meaningful way that we really use these big ideas of geometry to support the major work of middle school math in general, which is really around ratios and proportions. And so the middle school work is supported by thinking about those geometry models and representations to further develop and enhance the work of ratio and proportionality in our students in middle grades. Is that helpful? Does that kind of make sense to all of you?
Yeah, that does make sense. And so it's kind of like, well, we're setting up the routines. We're going to be doing that content there. The other thing, it said I just lost my mic, so I wasn't sure what happened. The other thing is when you showed the purple chart, what was that purple chart was called? And we can find that in the curriculum. Yep, I think course guide.
Yep, in the course guide, if you scroll down right before you get to the lessons by standard and standards by lesson, you'll see that there's a unit dependency chart, and that's right here for you as well. In addition to that, what's really nice right below that is all the standards by lesson, and that's in the teacher course guide. And so this just helps you think through developing scope. In addition, though, April, to your point, we do provide scope and sequence documents right here that help you see how many days you should think about planning for Unit 1 in each of the grade levels, Unit 2, Unit 3, and so on. I do want to say, as you look at the Unit 9 in each grade level, Unit 9 is a unit called Putting It All Together. And so this is an optional unit where these lessons are designed to be culminating lessons for the entire school year to wrap up the learning from the whole year. And so these are optional, and if you don't have time to get to them, it's not a huge deal, right? They're nice to have these lessons built in, but they are not required.
Okay, that's good to know. And then back on that, in that course guide, where it shows the standards by lesson, and it looks like several of the standards repeat across, right there. It looks like some of those standards repeat across several units. So yeah, it takes a couple of units. So even though like the title might say one thing, I might still be adjusting that major work of the grade and those particular standards for a couple of units.
Yes.
So it's like a one and done unit.
Yeah, and so really what we think about with these units, right, is that the way that the learning progresses and the way that we intentionally pull in skills into various lessons, you're going to see, and in the first year that you teach the curriculum, there is going to be a level of faith that the curriculum authors are really bright. And April knows Bill McCallum, and I know Bill McCallum, and he's probably one of the brightest people I know. There is some level of trust that the way things are sequenced, it is incredibly beautiful and powerful. But it's hard to see that if you're if you're not really spending the time to work through the curriculum in the first year and seeing how the sequence of lessons flows. So I know that this sounds hard, but in the first year, I truly say follow the scope and sequence and trust the authors. Trust that they know what they're doing so that you can see the mathematics unfold in such a beautiful way. And even kids will be able to see it and make connections as well.
I just had to unmic. Yes. So I did notice that we're on some of those where it's going for, a couple of units. So
yeah,
you don't have to feel like, hey, they didn't completely 100% get this topic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to cover it again. So that's kind of nice to know.
And April, I just want to let you know something else I think is really important for teachers to understand about the practice problems. So just to your point around this idea of like spiraling. In the practice problems, so like if I was doing lesson 1 in the practice problems, you're going to notice there's going to be some problems that are aligned directly to this lesson. But when you dig in, you're going to notice that some problems actually go back and revisit prior units and prior lessons. And they're pulled in they're created and designed very intentionally. So in this lesson, we've used a problem from Unit 2 in Lesson 16 that aligns with the content that they're doing for this lesson, but it also revisits things that they did in prior lessons. And those are called out in those practice problems as well, where teachers could really think about, how the curriculum continually revisits the mathematics that kids are using and have done, and connects it to what they're doing as they move forward.
Okay, and I did get a question about the major work of the grade, if that's highlighted anywhere in the resource itself. Like, I know we can go to the focus documents and see the major works and the major clusters, but is that within the resource itself for teachers?
I don't believe that is called out like that, but I will ask. I know that we have some IQIP and EMET rubrics that we have internally used that I believe we are able to share with folks that ask for them. So we can help you with thinking through those pieces and those questions. I don't know if there is a resource that calls out intentionally what you're saying and asking for, but I will ask and try to get more clarity on that myself.
Sure, and that would be great because, that would be one of the resources that we can put in the guidebook, and then that way everyone in Iowa, and if we need to tweak it a little bit for Iowa users, like some of the other, what they call the enhancements, right? So, like the lessons or the supply list or just different things like that where teachers are like, hey, it would be really great if we had that. And it's like, instead of 333 districts or, just in Iowa, but then across the country, everybody embedding it, like, let's do it once.
Well, the other thing that I think is really important, April, I'm not 100% sure on this. Maybe you can help me with this. My understanding, though, is as schools think about adopting a curriculum, if they use the standardized rubrics like IMET and EQUIP, and they are able to then use these rubrics, but then they're able to get they can then use federal funds to purchase curricular materials as they're showing evidence of using these rubrics for curriculum adoption. There's something like that. I'm not sure. Does that make sense? Are you familiar with that?
I am not familiar with that at all.
I need to look at that.
Yep, that is not in the wheelhouse. So yeah, I wouldn't.
Okay, I need to find out more clarity on that. But I know that those rubrics are really important for lots of reasons. But I know when school districts are using these standardized rubrics for reviewing materials, it does allow them to access funds for purchasing materials for curriculum.
And we do, we share that information out because the IMET from Student Achievement Partners achieve the course. So we share that out as a resource when districts are looking for ways, and along with ed reports and all those other, things. And so, and we've done a lot of work around the EQUIP rubric, so.
Good. Yeah, they're great rubrics, and you should use. I'd highly recommend all schools and districts use them when reviewing curriculum materials.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and I'll follow up with you if we have any other questions. Somebody, might have one after we post the recording, and so we'll just connect and we'll make sure. Paul's been really great about just making sure Iowa schools are taken care of, and it's not, I don't virtually slack him for the record. It's just sometimes, like he's reached out and you're playing that email or phone tag, and so sometimes if you've been trying to get a hold of him and you can't or whatever, you let me know, and then I can shoot him a quick, hey, Paul, take care of my people.
I know. I love Iowa. I truly do. You guys are great. And it's been a really wonderful working experience with all of you, and April as well. And the beauty is we've added Geeta onto the team, and she is incredibly willing and helping us all move Iowa forward as well. So Geeta put her contact information in the chat box. You have my contact information. We are all here to help you and support you. And April does a nice job of kind of virtually slapping me to make sure that I'm getting connected to the right people. So
here he goes again, Geeta.
I know.
Thank you very much again. And Eric, you're most welcome. And we will get this in the guidebooks. We'll share it out across the networks and the community, along with the information for the statewide LMS, because I know we've got teachers interested in that. So I'm just really happy to be able to make the connections for you. And you guys are really, it's all of you doing the heavy lifting, right? Like, it's not hard to schedule a webinar and send an email. So you all are awesome. And thank you for thank you for doing the great things you do for kids, and just us to have more options as we look to implement the standards with integrity. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week, and we will see you later.